Well, as social media fatigue sets in, companies need to consider their social comms strategies more carefully. These days, it is about far more than simply being on Facebook. It's about being an actively engaged brand citizen, and we will unpack what this means and how your business can become truly social in the current context, both digitally and offline. Tandi Sizwe still joins us with Jessica Hubbard as well from FinWeek, and Andy Rice, brand strategist, and Craig Rodney, CEO of Cerebra, joins us for more. So what do we mean when we talk about becoming brand citizens? Do you want to give it a kickoff?
So in the online space and as the social space has evolved, we've realized that the technologies and the conversations are human conversations. Brands have had to learn, as socials evolve, they've had to learn how to be a bit more human and a bit less brand. And that's the major crux at the moment.
Andy, can we bring you in here and talk a little bit about the social media fatigue? Do you think that companies are now saying, actually, to hell with our social media strategies, or are they really paying attention?
No, I think it's growing, but I think perhaps what's happened is that they were set too high expectations at the outset, so they got tired of things not being realized, but then they were never going to be realized at those levels in the first place. But I do think this concept of brand citizenship is used slightly ambiguously, because I think offline it means something very different to it means online. And I'm very interested particularly in the offline component. I mean, Craig obviously is very keen on the online side. But for me, a brand citizenship concept is about brands understanding that they are no longer just a facilitator of transactions, and therefore they operate in a category, but that they are actually social citizens, and they have to make a difference on the society, the broader community that they operate within. And that requires a sort of evolution of traditional social responsibility interventions into something that's much more linked to brand strategy.
Jessica, can you share some of those FinWeek insights in terms of the article?
Sure. Well, what I've found is that companies are looking at their social media strategies and trying to convince their exco to allocate budget to a comms agency or something, which a large part of the budget is starting to go towards digital. But they want to see, how is this going to benefit me? And there's too often an assumption that because a company has 10,000 Facebook likes or it's got 10,000 Twitters, that it means it's doing well on the social media front. But I put the question to Andy and to Craig, what does this really mean? Do 10,000 likes on Facebook actually translate into higher sales? Does it translate into brand awareness? Because quite frankly, I don't think excos have the budget, to waste anymore on these sort of frivolous strategies.
It's always an interesting topic, and I think working in media, you always realize that there's the debate of, is print media dying or is social media taking over? And I think South Africa has a history of adopting new technologies quite late. And if you look at the current environment now, companies' revenues are stretched, and spending that money without knowing if you will get a return back. And I think with social media, there's always the question is, I put in a budget of 500,000, for example, and how will that translate to more sales? And there's also a question of how do I measure, or how do you measure the efficacy of all this spend? How far are we in terms of answering those questions?
How do you measure it?
So I agree. The number of fans on Facebook and number of Twitter followers is becoming increasingly irrelevant measure. A lot of the measures that we look at map back to what the client strategy is in the first place. So a lot of our clients use social media as a conflict resolution area. And so we can measure the number of calls that are diverted away from their call centers. And that's a real cost. And when you're diverting a couple of thousand calls a month and you're managing those conflicts via a social channel instead of having a team of people at a call center doing it.
Is that where the value comes in, conflict resolution?
Well, that's one of the values, because that's one of the ways that people, or one of the ways companies use social and human beings use social. One of the biggest things that our clients get out of social media is the ability to do market research and listen. A company like Vodacom, say, they have upwards of 50, 60,000 brand mentions online. These are things that people are saying about them. We're able to interrogate that information and go back into them and say, this is what people are saying about you. These are the products that they enjoy. These are the products that they don't like. These are the things that they want. And I mean, Andy will tell you, that kind of market research, if you're going to have a team of people phoning around random people, that's now available to them.
And then you use that market research to change your product to try and get the sale.
Yeah, I mean, back to Jessica's point about the number of likes, I mean, more and more companies are incentivizing people to like a Facebook page, which is so artificial it's untrue. But the qualitative research is really valuable. I was working for a big retail client recently, and I just, prior to a meeting, did a search on Twitter by their brand, and just took the last 15 or so references to their brand on Twitter, and not one of them was about the merchandise they actually sell. Everything was about their experience with the brand, the Boerewors roll for sale in the car park, the people saying, oh my goodness, my husband's gone into, it was Builder's Warehouse actually, gone into Builder's Warehouse, what am I going to do for the next 3 hours? And all of these things, nothing was about wheelbarrows being 20% off till Saturday. It was all about how they relate to the brand and the experience, and that's what you can get from qualitative research through online platforms.
So you want to add?
Yes, well, I want to challenge the idea around this social media fatigue. Consumers aren't suffering fatigue from social media at all. It's actually the opposite. More and more people are flooding onto social media. From a brand point of view, a lot of brands rushed in early. They went in because they saw everyone else doing it and kind of went, we've got to do it. Like, we have to. It was more of a panic decision. Thankfully, we're getting to a point now where the decision making is reasoned, and we're moving away from social media and we're moving towards this concept of social business. Social media is where you have a Facebook page. Social business is where you understand that you have information age customers, and you need to have an information age business. You can't have a Stone Age business with information age customers, because as soon as you have that disconnect, as soon as you say to a customer, please send us a fax to cancel this subscription, and people are going, what do you mean a fax? What's a fax machine? And can we please catch up a bit? But a lot of brands are suffering because of that, and as soon as they make that decision to become a social business, then they start to see proper value beyond a marketing expense.
I want to touch a little on the so-called experts out there when it comes to social media and digital strategy, because have we not seen a number of fly-by-nights coming into the fold where you've got every man and his dog professing to be an expert in the social media space? And because a lot of our companies are old school and they've got traditional marketing budgets, they haven't gone into the social media ambit themselves, and they're leaving it to people, potentially even younger generation individuals, coming forward and saying, this is a space that I know backwards, I can help you out. Have we seen that trend?
Yeah, I think that in 3 years' time there won't be such a thing as a digital agency, because they will all have been either absorbed into traditional agencies, or traditional disciplines will have been brought into the digital agency, because there is an assumption in having a specialist digital agency, which is where the whole industry mushroomed, that there is something different about the digital platform, as if we have a slightly different makeup and DNA and response to stimuli when we're online, when in fact we're all human beings. So I think that's been I wouldn't be so cynical as to suggest it was deliberate, but there's no doubt that because many people in positions of marketing responsibility are of an older generation, and therefore they are digital immigrants, that the digital natives, the younger generations coming through, are able to perhaps use that understanding gap to their commercial advantage.
So a shake-up in the industry is what we will see.
I think absolutely. The more traditional marketers become comfortable with social media and understand it, the better value businesses will get out of it. The early days where were the guys going, where there's mystery, there's margin, and they kind of pretended to be the gurus, etc. The faster we move away from that, the better it is for businesses, but the better it is for social, because more people start to go, well, there is value there.
I mean, I'm a little cynical, and I have been for some time, because if you look at digital agencies, their specialty really is to understand how these platforms work. But companies need to have someone who understands how to relay their message. So who controls the content side of things? Now, I understand there's a design digital side of things. Now, who controls and ensures that the right message is conveyed, and who controls that content side of things?
So that's what we do as a business. Fundamentally, we look after brands' conversations with their customers. So we take over the responsibility of engaging with customers or anyone who's interested in a brand. When people ask questions or they challenge you, etc., etc., there are agencies like ourselves out there who are able to pick that up and understand that. And a lot of companies don't necessarily know how to do that themselves.
Jessica, I want to bring you in here as a media house, as well as Tanda Sizwe. I'm so sorry, I'm having problems. It's Friday and there's a long weekend.
It's a long weekend.
we use it effectively within the CNBC Africa folder, and so does every media organization now for interactivity with our audience, immediate feedback. You must do it similarly in the digital and in the print space. This, for us, it works brilliantly as communicators, as media organizations. The real value, and I think I really want to distill this in terms of other organizations using it, is it merely just a feedback mechanism? What are your thoughts from how you use it and how companies that you've interacted with or you've interviewed in your article?
I think there are two main themes coming out of what I've spoken to Andy and Craig about, and that is, one, social media and these tools are being used to listen to consumers. So listening is a huge part of it. And then there is the feedback element. So you listen and you accept what's coming back at you, and then you need to react on that. You can't just sit back on your laurels and say, okay, I've heard, we're going to go
Those
about
are some
doing the same
crazies
thing.
out there, let's ignore that advice.
The other element is not pushing branded content sort of down the throats of consumers in a forceful, sort of aggressive way. This is what I want you to be thinking about today. It's actually sort of sending advice and relevant and useful information to consumers in a way that maybe more subtly get your brand message across. So Andy mentioned using online forums. So if you're, I think you used the example of an agricultural sort of client. So you can start an online forum where you've got communities, online communities, where you use thought leaders within your client's organization to start a conversation, and you offer advice to consumers. So you say, during the winter you should use this and this brand, or you should, sorry, not brand, you should use this and this type of fertilizer at this and this time, and you allow them to start a conversation and discuss the issues that are relevant to them at that point. And then at least you're getting your brand name out there, but in a very subtle way.
Yeah, I've got a question on these communities, because I've also been approached recently by a number of players who want to build a community that you can interact with and get that feedback. And my biggest concern is that generally you've got to bribe your community to join you. So you've got to offer them either cash down the line or a prize down the line. Are you finding people are willingly joining communities without being bribed?
If you get the incentives right, the early days, everyone went, we're giving away a free iPad for followers. And then they were successful. I mean, they built these massive communities, but those communities were irrelevant. They've got a big number on how many people follow you, but they didn't want to be there.
You've skewed your data
as soon as you take away the iPad, you take away the reason for them being there. What we've realized since then is that if you share content, if a company shares values with their customers and with an audience, and you create content that people choose to consume instead of is forced down their throats, then people will voluntarily be a part of that community and go, you know what, I get so much value out of this because I get to talk with people, they send me content, I have conversations, we share values. And if you get that right, then people are there by choice. And that's powerful. But bribing them to be there, you're wasting your time.
But that's
nothing new. I mean, every media owner knows that if you deliver content of value, people will voluntarily go there. And if you force them, they won't. And they're not called social media for nothing. They're called social media because that's people's principal motives for interacting is a social one. So if you're going to bring a commercial message in, it has to be one of great value that people don't feel it's intrusive. So my view is that a category-based discussion forum with very subtle branding, but where the content is delivering real value, is a good starting point for that kind of debate.
How do you use your online communities at Finweek, Thandisizwe?
I mean, we use it for a variety of reasons, but I think, we've looked at, for example, our website, and we look at every other website. They have the same tabs. It's for news, it's for companies, it's for this, it's for that, and we realized that people can find that information anywhere they go, and we've designed our online space and we call it a destination of ideas. So we've designed it in a special way that when you go to it, you find value, and that's what we're talking about. So, we're not trying to push brand, and that's what I wanted to ask. For example, for insurance companies, what you don't want to be doing is saying, buy our insurance cover or buy a funeral cover because it's give you A, B, and C. But what you want to be saying is, having a funeral cover helps you get rid of certain headaches over the long run or when they happen in 10 years' time. So, we use it in terms of Finweek, we use it to be a valuable source of information, and not just information that's available everywhere. We make it a destination of ideas. It can be ideas about entrepreneurs or entrepreneurship, business development, sales, something you would not necessarily associate with the feedback.
I want to come back to a comment that you made, Craig, that the number of Twitter followers is becoming irrelevant, or Facebook likes. Let's stay specifically with Twitter, because I think that the number of followers is important. It gives you leverage. It becomes it's competition to us as a broadcaster. Each person, the wider your net, so to speak, 100,000 followers, 200,000 followers, you are in fact your own broadcaster.
So there was a study released in Europe that said that Audi was the most powerful car brand online within its category, and yet they had the least number of followers. But what they did have was the highest volume of engagement, which means when they created a piece of content, as a percentage of their follower base, they had the most reactions. It could be good or bad or whatever it is, but they connected with people. People would share that content, they would comment, they would like it, they would retweet it. Whatever they did with it, they would engage. And that, for me, is a sign of a healthy audience. You can have 100,000 followers on Twitter. If you post something and it doesn't go anywhere, people don't share it, they don't comment, etc., then you may as well have one person following you. It becomes irrelevant.
Are they still paying celebrities in the international arena to tweet when they've got millions of followers?
Oh yes, and you can buy packages of followers. And, it's crazy, and that's the point, that the absolute number is less important than the quality. And there's a couple of other important points, I think. Well, one is the fact that we do tend to talk about social media and digital platforms in isolation, when all the evidence suggests that they work best when they are used in conjunction with traditional media. So it's not an or, do I go TV or do I go social, but how do I find a way in which I can make the two work together, because generally 1 + 1 = 3. And the other observation is that people still believe that social is going to be dramatically the market leader in X years' time. Well, I listened to a talk last night from a senior person within Yum, the KFC holding company, and 70% of their global budget goes on television still.
I retweeted it because it's core to my business, I have to say.
And 20% goes on social, and 10% on what they call learning or experimental stuff. So even the very biggest global brands are more sanguine about how big digital should be in their media mix, and I'm quite sure that when they use it properly, they're using it in conjunction with the other media.
Yes, but then enter FNB and the fact that their big swing is to spending a huge amount on digital platforms. Do you think they're early on the game?
No, I think they've realized that they need to map their online spend with the growth of online in people's lives. The more people that come online, the more they need to spend there. The more time those people spend online, the more time the brand needs to spend there. So you're talking
your book, I'm talking my book.
The very interesting thing is there's a certain journalist who had, I think he was sitting at 30,000 followers, and there was a certain case in the country, and he ended up having over 125,000 followers in a space of 3 days. Now, an individual like that, can he use...
Let's name him, Barry Bateman.
Barry Bateman.
It's not like no one does it.
I couldn't believe it. I was watching his Twitter followers
they dropped off again when the story went out of the news. People unfollowed him again.
Yeah. So my question is, can an individual like Barry Bateman use the fact that I have 120,000 odd followers, to consult your company and say, you give me your messages, or a list of messages that you want me to tweet and retweet to my 100 and...
You can, if you want to destroy your credibility, the same way CNBC can have plugged spots on here and not disclose that it's paid for. When people find out, you lose your credibility. But sorry for taking control of this. I want to go back to this budget
Don't
thing.
worry, I'll come in heavy-handed if I need to.
I want to go back to the budget thing, because Andy said that KFC spends 10% on social. So let's be 20% on social.
70% on television. Let's put those stats out there.
So let's, because I don't want to bash the 70% of television, but I want to make sure
Otherwise,
that
this is live television. You out the door.
No, of course. I want to make sure that people understand that Facebook didn't exist 7 years ago. Twitter's been around for 5-6 years. So anything pre-Facebook, let's just kind of say that no one really knew what it was. It was everyone spoke about blogs before Facebook. So in the space of 7 years, this social media thing has garnered 20% of KFC's budget. I'm not going to say that it's going to become the 70. I'm not going to say they're going to swap around. But I do want to point out that is monumental. That is a monumental shift. You can't.
Look, jokes
put that
aside,
down.
agreed. And even as a news journalist, I get my information from my cell phone, from Twitter feeds, and it's actually all I need to know. Unfortunately, we have to leave it there. So it's been very, very interesting. I think I'm being wrapped over the knuckles from the control room. Thanks to our guest, Andy Rice, brand strategist, and Craig Rodney, CEO of Cerebra. Time for a short ad break, and we'll be back with some insight and investment after this. Stay tuned to CNBC Africa, Fin Week, Money Matters.